Good morning, dear children of Standard 6. This is our history period. So please open the book of history and come to the page number 11, in which the first chapter is given. First chapter of history is knowing the past. In this chapter, we will study about the importance of history, literary sources of history. Then we will read about archaeological sources of history. After that, connection between history and geography. What is history? History is the knowledge of our past. It is the study of human evolution from the Stone Age to modern times. Humans have changed a lot since they first appeared on Earth. Studying history tells us about the story of our ancestors, their traditions, their culture, their socio-economic setup, political systems, etc. Now, historians are people who study the past in a systematic way and record events. Herodotus was one of them, and he was the earliest scholar who studied the past, and that is why he is known as the father of history. Now, why it is important to study our past, or why it is important to study history? The study of past is important because our past has given us many gifts, like our civilization, language, lifestyle, science and technology are all gifts of our past. Thus, in return, we should acknowledge our past contribution and interpret it in useful ways to shape our future choices. Studying history also enables us to link our present to the past. In this process, we get to learn a lot about ourselves, the time we live in, and what shaped it. Historians divided history into two broad periods. The first one is prehistory and the second one is history. Prehistory refers to the period before the invention of writing, hence there are no written records. And the next one is the period after the invention of writing is called history. Writing developed around 5,000 years ago. The earliest writings were found on pillars, rocks, barks of trees, leaves, parchment, copper plates, and clay tablets. Once paper was discovered, all writing was done on paper, and recording of historical events became more detailed. The invention of printing press made the production and distribution of books easier and faster to the common man. Now, time and history. Historians use the term like BC and AD to refer to the time when a certain event occurred. Historians mark time on a timeline. The midpoint of this timeline is the birth of Jesus Christ, which is year 1. The years before the birth of Christ are expressed in BC, meaning before Christ, and are counted backwards, like 100, 99, 98, 97, like that. Sometimes circa, CIRCA, is used before BC or AD to refer to an approximate time period but not an exact one. Today we also refer BC as BCE, that is before the Christian era, and AD as CE, that is the Christian era. Christian era is also known as Common Era. Now, connection between history and geography. Physical features and the climate of any place have had a great impact on the lives of people through the ages. For example, the availability or lack of natural resources like food, water, timber, arable land determined where people settled in the past. People settled in places close to a river because water was a necessity. This also used as waterways for domestic use, for irrigation, and were sources of food. All these rivers have given these facilities to the people. That is why Indus Valley civilization, Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, and Chinese civilizations, all these were developed near river valleys. On the other hand, hostile climatic conditions like droughts, earthquakes, and snow led to migration of people on a large scale. What is migration? Movement of people from one place to another is called migration. How do we know about the past? Just as an investigator studies the clues available at the scene of a crime to draw conclusions, historians gather information from the different types of clues or evidences left by man in the past to reconstruct it. These clues are called sources of history, and the sources of history can be categorized or divided in two groups. The first one is archaeological sources of history, and the second one is literary sources of history. What are archaeological sources of history? Most of our information about prehistoric man, the Indus Valley people, and other ancient civilizations is based upon archaeological findings. Archaeology is the study of the remains of the past like monuments, tools, pottery, coins, weapons, paintings, edicts, and other artifacts. A person who studies these sources is called an archaeologist. Today, it has also become possible for scientists to find the age of organisms which are long dead by a method known as carbon-14 dating, which measures the amount of carbon-14 in their remains. All living beings take in some radioactive carbon from the atmosphere during their lives. When they die, this element in their bodies begins to decay at a fixed rate. So by examining the amount of carbon-14 still remaining in human and animal bones, archaeologists can calculate their age. Archaeologists dig up buried remains and bring to light such clues or evidences and interpret their meanings. Archaeological findings are usually in four forms. The first one, inscriptions; second one, coins; third one, monuments; and the fourth one is artifacts and objects. Now, the first one is inscriptions. In ancient times, rulers engraved important messages on rocks, pillars, stone walls, clay tablets, and copper plates. These writings are known as inscriptions. The study of old inscriptions is known as epigraphy. A study of these inscriptions throws light upon the language of the people, names of the rulers, the years they ruled, their military achievements, the religious and social conditions, and many other details. For example, a study of King Ashoka's inscriptions on pillars and rock edicts describe his achievements, his religious beliefs, and his instructions for the common public. The next one is coin. The study of coins is called numismatics. Coins are made of metals like gold, silver, and copper, and therefore are not destroyed easily. They have the names and images of rulers stamped upon them and also give information such as the date of accession and the death of rulers. Thus, they help in fixing the chronology of various dynasties. The metal content in the coins also indicates the economic conditions of an empire. For example, high gold or silver content in a coin indicates that an empire was economically prosperous. Similarly, the opposite indicates that an empire was economically stagnating. Apart from this, the presence of Indian coins in foreign lands indicates foreign trade. Next one is monument. Ancient buildings like temples, palaces, and forts are known as monuments. They were built for different reasons and give us information about the life and times of the people. For example, the carvings on the panels of the Qutub Minar tell us about the reign of the early Delhi sultans, and the carved panels on the walls and railings of the Sachi Stupa tell stories from the life of the Buddha. The Great Wall of China was built by Shi Huangdi to keep out the Tartars. Some monuments like the Red Fort were built as residential places for kings, while others like the Taj Mahal were built as tombs. Thus, different buildings served different purposes. So, with the help of monuments, also we can gather information. Next one is artifact and objects. Artifacts and objects, works of art like paintings on walls and stone carvings, help historians to form a picture of the cultural and religious life of ancient societies. Example, the cave paintings of Ajanta and Ellora. Other man-made objects like pots, toys, jewelry, weapons, swords, statues, terracotta figures, and seals also show the progress of human civilization at a particular time in history. You can see in page number 16 that the figure is given, the dancing girl bronze statue excavated at Mohenjo-daro is an example of excellent craftsmanship of the Indus people. So next one is literary sources. Before going there, at first we should remind one more time that archaeological sources of information are divided into 4 groups, or we can say that archaeological findings are usually in 4 forms like inscriptions, coins, monuments, and artifacts and objects. These are 4. Now we will start about literary sources of information of history. It took humans a long time to develop the art of writing. Before paper was invented, people wrote on palm leaves and the bark of birch trees. These handwritten records in the form of books, which include both religious and secular literature, are called manuscripts. Religious and secular literature. What is secular literature? Religious, the literature in which about religion is written, that is religious literature. And secular literature, like our country, our India, our nation, is a secular state. You have found in some books that India is a secular state. What does it mean? Secular state means there is no state religion in front of the government or in front of our Indian constitution. Each and every religion is same. That is why there is no state religion in our nation, in our country, which is called a secular state. So all these are called manuscripts. Those are handwritten. Over the years, manuscripts got destroyed. So many manuscripts got destroyed. However, some which were written on rocks and slabs were well preserved in temples and monasteries. What is a monastery? A building occupied by a community of monks living under religious vows. That is called monasteries. These literary sources shed light on social and economic life, religious beliefs, and culture. Let us look at the 2 types of literary sources in detail. So in detail we will study about 2 types of literary sources. The first one is religious literature. all scriptures are associated with rituals or religious practices of the past and are called religious sources. So, at first we have to study about the religious literature. What are religious literature? Religious literatures are the literature or in which rituals or religious practices of the past are written. So we can say all scriptures are associated with rituals or religious practices of the past. These are called religious sources of literature for history. These include Vedas, the oldest recorded text of the Aryans, that is Vedas. Next one is epics, which includes Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Gita and the Puranas. Next one is Buddhist Triptikas. These were written mostly in the language of Pali and later in Sanskrit and tell us about Buddhism and the life of people in the 6th century BCE. What is BCE? Before Common Era or before Christian Era. Earlier we used to write in place of BCE what? Here it is what? Before Common Era. Now the year is 2020. That is 2020 Common Era and before Common Era BCE. So CE we are using for AD and BCE we are using for BC. Secular literature also is there by which we gather information. So non-religious texts on people, places, politics, science, law, medicine, life of kings and other general subjects are known as secular literature. All these subjects are known as secular literature, means those subjects which are not related with any ritual or religion is called secular literature. All these are secular literature. Travelogues or accounts of foreign travelers like Megasthenes, Indica and Chinese travel account by Fayan and Huanshan. All these are travelogues, means what they have seen when they came to India, when they traveled to India, what they have seen, they have written in their travelogues. Biographies such as Harshcharita, which was written by Banabhat and Kalhans Rajtarangini, all these are secular literature. Dramas and poems such as Kalidasa's Abhijana Sakuntalam and Meghduta. So Abhijana Sakuntalam and Meghduta, these are written by Kalidas. These were dramas and poems and they provide us information about that period. So this is which type of source? This is literary sources of information. And literary sources of information are divided in two categories. The first one is what? Religious literature, and the second one is secular literature. In religious literature we have studied about Vedas, means Vedas are the examples of religious literature. Epics are the example of religious literature, like Buddhist Triptikas. These are also religious literature. Jain literature like the Angas, all were written mostly in Prakrit language and are full of valuable information. So we are studying about secular literature. Dramas and poems we have studied, like which was written by Kalidasas, like Abhijana Sakuntalam and Meghduta. All these are secular literature. Folk tales such as Panchatantra and Jataka tales. Jatakas are also related by Gautam Buddha. Means those life which were lived by Gautam Buddha in various life forms, these were written in Jataka tales. Law books such as Manu Smriti, these are also secular literature. Political treatises like Kautilya's Arthashastra. Arthashastra, which was written by Kautilya. Who was Kautilya? Chanakya. Chanakya was also known as Kautilya, and he has written the book Arthashastra, which explains about the administration, which explains how a government should be governed by various administrator, rules, regulations. All things were written in Arthashastra, which was written by Chanakya or Kautilya. A careful study of these sources helps us to reconstruct the story of our past. Archaeologists and historians work together. Archaeologists and historians work together and complete the jigsaw puzzle of our ancient past by checking and rechecking facts derived from various sources to give a fairly accurate picture. The entire story of our past cannot be told as we are continuously finding more evidence and discovering our past gradually. Thus, the history that we read is the result of lifelong research by many scholars and is ever changing. So after this, the chapter is completed. So we should revise the things which are very important in this chapter. We should discuss one more time those which are important, like the very first question, what is history? So we can say that history is the knowledge of our past, and it is the story of human evolution from the Stone Age to modern times. At the same time, who are called historians? Historians are the people who study the past in a systematic way and record events. Who is the father of history? Can you say? The father of history is Herodotus. Why? He was the earliest scholar who studied past. That is why he is known as the father of history. Then we have studied about importance of history, why it is required. It is required because our past has given us various gifts. Now we have studied about prehistory and history. Before writing, people used different materials to make buildings, or so our ancestors used different materials like bones, tools, weapons, and by studying these evidences, they get an idea of how our ancestors lived before. That is prehistory. But after the invention of writing, the period is called history. Means writing developed around 5,000 years ago, and after that period is known as history. But before that, the period was known as prehistory. After that, we have studied about time and history. BC and AD we have studied. Earlier historians used BC, that is before Christ, AD, that is Anno Domini. But now at this time we are using BCE, that is before Common Era or before Christian Era, and the next one in place of AD we are using CE, that is Common Era or Christian Era. After that, we have studied about connection between geography and history, that the places which are suitable for living conditions, the people settled there. So we can say that geography and history both are connected. After that, we have studied that there are two sources of information of history, like archaeological sources, and the another one is literary sources. Archaeological sources or archaeological findings can be categorized into four groups: inscriptions, coins, monuments, artifacts, and objects. At the same time, the literary sources of information, which gives us information about history, like religious literature and the next one is secular literature. Religious literature which are related with religion, and secular literature which are non-religious texts on people, place, politics, science, law, medicine, life of kings, and other general subjects. Okay, thank you.